All right, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to a Black Ass Conversation. My name is Brandon Mack, pronouns he, him, his with Black Lives Matter Houston. And I'm joined today by Jaison Oliver. Jaison, would you like to introduce yourself to the people?
Yeah, I'm Jaison Oliver with the Imaginoir BLMHTX Collective, pronouns he, him. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we're doing this conversation tonight because today was the day that the HPD offered their budget workshop to the city council and to the city of Houston. And this was our opportunity to be able to ask questions about the budget, but also to call for a defunding of the police and leading to alternatives to police reform. Jaison, what was your overall opinion on how the workshop went today?
Well, if I to joke, I'd have to say I'll have to get back to you on that, which was the frequent response to nearly all of the questions that people had for Chief Finner today about the budget. So I'm glad that there were 21 people signed up for public comment for today's HPD Budget Workshop. There was, I think, one person last year, so that's a huge increase. We had our own kind of way of arranging things behind the scenes, so we were able to affirm what people were talking about before when they tried to kind of push past answers without giving a real response. So just on the organizing side, I'm really excited about how that went. As far as the actual responses to our questions or getting more information about what's going on with HPD or what the possibilities are in terms of creating community safety alternatives that don't require further investment in policing, it's a little too soon to tell.
Yeah, for me, what I felt was that the presentation lacked a lot of specificity. They talked about a lot of very specific funds and either why there was an increase or why there was a decrease, but there wasn't really a lot that was offered in terms of, well, what exactly are you going to do specifically with the money? And to me, that was the thing that I think most of us were wanting to hear,
They're going
and
to
we're
pay for more
not getting.
officers.
Right.
That's it, right? They're going to pay for more officers. That's their solution to crime. Pay for more officers, pay for more overtime, and maybe add in some like new technology like ShotSpotter, which already has, there was a write-up just last week. It's this gunshot tracker technology. But there was just a write-up last week about how bad it is in Chicago, like how bad that technology is and how wasteful it is in Chicago. So like that's it. We need more officers. We don't really give clear answers about what their time is allocated toward, but we need more officers.
Yeah, that was a consistent thing. One thing that they brought up was an old study that suggested that Houston needs about, I think, 1,000 to 1,500 more officers, and now they're calling for 1,500 to 2,000 more officers without any kind of clear justification as to why you need more. Because one consistent question was exactly how much time is really being devoted towards like violent crime prevention, and that couldn't even be addressed and answered. But and yet the belief is that they want to suggest is that, oh, more cops equals more safety, but safety for who? Especially given the fact that we know that this is a system that is based on devaluing Black people from the onset and not demonstrating any ways in which that they're actually truly valuing Black people now. And then also the fact that you mentioned overwhelmingly the speakers kept on calling for defunding should suggest that the city of Houston is moving in that direction that we want to defund. We want to see allocations in new places. We want to see actual reform that is showing that this system is being dismantled. What do you think should be the next step for folk now that the budget, the conversation has happened in terms of the workshop? What's the next step?
So there is a public hearing session that's happening. I'm looking at my calendar now so I can give the real date. But that's happening next week on May 26th, Wednesday, May 26th at 9 a.m. Last year, the budget hearings happened after the deadline for amendments to the budget, which is, I think, wild and telling about how they like how the city wants us to provide input on this process. Now, this public hearing is taking place on the 26th, which is one day before the deadline for budget amendments, which is on Thursday, the 27th. So I think making sure that people participate in that and speak up. There's also going to be, we just sent a letter, the people who are speaking to Chief Fenner and who spoke during public comment today sent a joint letter to Chief Fenner asking him to hold a town hall before this deadline on the budget so that he can answer these questions publicly, and then also make sure that people are able to pose other questions who weren't able to make it at 9 a.m. on, 9 a.m. on whatever day today is. I'm so bad with
on a Tuesday.
On a Tuesday, right, 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. For those who weren't able to make it, creating another opportunity for people to ask real questions and get clarity about the budget. So I would say telling people to keep their eyes open for that whenever this town hall is scheduled, and also that public hearing on Wednesday, the 26th.
How confident do you feel that we're actually going to get responses before this next meeting?
I think we'll get responses. It seems like the chief, the mayor, a lot of like Houston's elected and appointed officials reply to and respond to public pressure. So that is why we have even the important, but the like steps toward reform that we have now. The mayor wouldn't have created this task force without the community pushing for it, right? This public hearing happening before the budget deadline for amendments would not have happened without thousands of people calling for it. So there's a clear demand, and like we're going to put pressure to make sure that if he doesn't do this, right, like the ramifications, we need to make sure that it's clear like what the ramifications are for ignoring this request from concerned citizens. Well, concerned Houstonians, not just citizens.
Right, and the key thing is that while these meetings and things of that nature are done, and to a certain extent deliberately done during times in which people cannot be available, because I mean it's hard when you are working and trying to get either even onto a call or down to City Hall or to talk with your local elected employees, as we like to call them. It is so critically important that you try to get your voice heard in any number of ways. So aside from being present at that particular meeting, people can submit their comments, their ideas, their suggestions directly to their particular representative, also to all of the at-large, and there are 5 at-large council members. So we definitely want to recommend that folks do just that in the event that they're not able to participate, but they do have to register for this particular meeting, right?
Yeah, they'll have to register for public comment for that meeting, I believe. Those details haven't been announced yet, but that's typically the way that it's done. I'll also say it's really important if you are emailing your council members to add on those at-large members, because some members are more responsive and attentive or agreeable to issues like policing reform than others. So you may not get a response, or the council member that is for your district may not be willing to kind of forward those questions. So if you add on the at-large council members, it is likely that at least one of them will take up the mantle if you don't get a response from your district council member.
Absolutely. So we're definitely going to provide that information out to the people in terms of how you can contact your particular council member, how you can contact all of the at-large council members, but also if you're open and available to participating on that day, a showing from the people is going to be so important. So we definitely want to encourage everyone, if you have the ability to be able to speak up and out on the day that we have this discussion and this meeting related to the budget, it is so important. One thing that happened during today's discussion, and I really want to make sure that we do that here, is that there was space given before people could talk about defunding police that was given to the officers to address it before we even talked about it. So
Yeah.
in this space, we want to give space as to why is it important to defund the police. So
Yeah,
in your opinion, yeah.
that was really funny. This kind of the fact that Councilmember Martin knew, right? Like knew why people were there, because one, we had been participating in other workshops and saying, well, we're in the Department of Neighborhood session. We want to invest more in the Department of Neighborhoods. How might we shift funding from the HPD to the Department of Neighborhoods to make our community safer, to make our neighborhood safer, right? So we have been asking those questions already. So the chair of Budget and Finance already knew what was coming, in addition to there being 21 people signed up when there was one last year. But it's important to defund the police, one, because HPD takes up almost 40% of our city's operating budget. So for starters, when people talk about, it's not either or, it's both and, not when it comes to a city with a fixed budget and also a revenue cap. We can't just pull money out of nowhere. We have a specific amount of money to work with. In addition, we have this nice little pot of ARPA funds, right? American Rescue Plan Act funds that are coming. Recovery, one of those. Rescue or recovery, it's one of those R's. But we have this pot of money that's coming, and that money can be put toward cash assistance and rental relief, which we saw has been incredibly important for people during this pandemic. It can be put toward essential workers and childcare, and it can be put towards so many different things, right? And yet, a lot of it's being put toward closing the revenue gap, which we know, the revenue gap in the city's budget, which we know a lot of that goes toward the police. And the police are expanding things like their cadet classes. So on one end, it's just the fact that they take up an outsized portion of the budget. On the second end, the police in responding to harm and violence that takes place in our communities further creates more harm and violence. That is absolutely a fundamental problem. So if we're trying to deal with housing insecurity, give people housing, right? Don't send police out there who are going to criminalize them, or who have criminalized them in the past and are now going to like help them get services. That just creates, I think, unrealistic expectations of what most interactions with officers are going to be, to do these like community policing, public relations campaigns that make it seem like, oh, police aren't going to arrest you, right? They're going to play basketball with you. Like that's not what it is. So yeah, that is why, those are some reasons why it's important to defund the police. We need those dollars, and those are our tax dollars.
Absolutely. For me, the fundamental reason for why we have to defund is because if you end up increasing, that's an endorsement of the behavior. So why, if we know that Black people are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered when interacting with the police, why would we continue to finance that system? Why would we continue to finance a system that is supposed to address all these issues that they don't have training for and don't have answers for how they actually are going to address it? I mean, and that's one of the reasons for why the approach in terms of going to all the different budget meetings and talking about how these particular programs, these particular initiatives need to be more funded, because they would address those actual systemic issues that we wouldn't have to criminalize. So if you address homelessness by providing more homes, you don't criminalize homelessness. If you provide more food options, then people are not having to deal with the lack in order to just be able to feed themselves. If you actually finance more proper opportunities for Black home ownership, for economic opportunities in terms of jobs and things of that nature, then you wouldn't have people who feel like, oh, I have to do this other thing in order to sustain myself because I don't have any other options that this system is not giving me. So to me, it's just the fact of fundamentally, if you really are about addressing all these issues, it's not in the system that was built on the devaluation of Black people. It's about all these other systems that you could actually do better things with that would actually solve the problem, and we wouldn't need police. And then
Right.
also just being open to the opportunities of we don't have to abide by the system. So the key thing here is that we have options. And the key thing is that we have got to speak out about the fact that we as a city want more options. So
Mm-hmm.
our kind of call to action to everyone who's watching this conversation is to get involved. That's getting involved in signing up to speak at public session, to talk about the fact that you call for the defunding of the police and that you want allocations to mental health, to neighborhoods, to libraries, to other programs that can better service us as a community. If you're not able to be at that session, be sure that you're reaching and speaking out to your particular council member, as well as addressing all 5 of the at-large members and making sure that they know that our voices are heard, are here, and that we support the defunding and the dismantling of this system. Any
And
final
I'll say,
things for you, Jaison?
yeah, I'll say if people, if getting involved during the week, or if you still need support in trying to figure out what your advocacy can look like or what your participation can look like, we've been having workshops as part of a series called Data to Dream on Saturdays. So our kind of last session is going to be this Saturday at 11 a.m. You can find that at datatodream.eventbrite.com. But yeah, so just data to TO, so 2TO, datatodream.eventbrite.com. And you'll be able to see just a timeline for what's been going on and resources for getting involved. But we'll be having our last workshop on Saturday to talk through next steps and ways to get involved. And I also want to say,
Go
like
for it.
HPD knows, right? Every time when people bring this discussion up about how HPD shouldn't be addressing all these issues, they shouldn't be addressing homelessness, right? They shouldn't be addressing mental health issues. Like HPD knows and agrees. And yet their focus is more training, right? If you know that this shouldn't be under the purview of the police, why do you want more training for officers to deal with it? If one of your goals, like one of HPD's specific goals, is to increase the number of calls that are rerouted to other services, if that is an explicit goal, why shouldn't resources follow that, right? Why shouldn't funds follow that?
Right.
Is it just that everybody should be unfunded and HPD is just going to take more and more, which is what's happening in the budget? So I think HPD has a history of kind of being dishonest about our budget realities and the fact that everybody else's pots have been either shrinking or increasing at a smaller rate than HPD, which is absurd considering how they have a huge amount of money in comparison to parks, libraries, neighborhoods, right? All these other departments and divisions in the city. So I just want to point that out. Like, they agree that they're doing too much. And it's not like I don't dislike police officers, right? I don't want police officers to be stressed and having to go deal with the trauma of arresting people, right, on a regular basis for shoplifting during a pandemic, right? Like, I don't want officers to have to deal with that. I don't want you stressed and the like high rates of mental health issues that are actually happening to officers. These are real problems that we won't solve by overloading them, by continuing to overload them. So we need to take responsibilities off their plate, and we need to reallocate the resources and the personnel to other places and other departments.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jaison, for joining me today on this Black Ass Conversation. The key thing is, everyone, this is an all hands on deck situation. Get involved in the best way and whatever way that you can, because collectively we can dismantle this system and create a new one. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Jaison. And thank you everyone for watching, and please get involved, and we'll just leave you simply with this.
Defund the police.